Yes. Yes. What up, potty people, and welcome back to Clipped. I'm Eric, your host, and Clipped is a podcast that brings you podcast production tips, resources, education, and industry insights to help make your life easier. My goal is to help you start, grow, and monetize your podcast. This is episode 56. I'm talking about podcast risks, and it's timely because I actually just got back from Las Vegas with my wife, and we're based in LA, and Vegas is like our second home. We usually go like 1 or 2 times a year. We've been there combined probably 30, 40 times since we were 21. We didn't get married or meet when we were 21, but it just goes to show you like our Vegas history. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because Vegas, it was kind of an eye-opening trip for me. It's a city where fortunes are made and lost, and where every decision can be calculated or can just be a leap of faith. And funny enough, my wife actually hit a $1,300 jackpot on a $10 bet, which pumped us up for the whole trip, kind of paid for everything. But I'm here just to talk about the correlation between gambling, which I do like to do, and taking risks and gambling with your podcast. Okay, so one of the most important lessons I learned in Vegas is to bet on yourself. How do you bet on yourself with your podcast? Well, number one, it's developing that confidence. And number two, it's shooting your shot. And when I say shooting your shot, I want you to start doing what you want to do with your podcast or what you wish you could do. Because once you start doing that, you'll realize that it's not that far-fetched to reach out to that dream guest and invite them on the podcast, and them probably saying yes if your show is in the same niche as theirs. I want you to start pitching yourself to shows that you want to be on, taking that chance, doubling down on yourself. And if you're looking for a brand deal or monetization, shoot your shot and reach out to that brand. Honestly, send them a DM, craft an email and send it to someone at the company, message them on LinkedIn, whatever you need to do. But it's time to start betting on yourself and shooting your shot. And I want you to start realizing that you can do it. And a lot of this is done through email or social media. It's like, what do you have to lose? Hit that person up that you want to talk to. Reach out to that network that's maybe looking for shows in your niche to onboard as part of their network. Really, what I'm trying to say is that you just have to start doing what you want to do and not letting fear or the fear of rejection hold you back. It's really about putting yourself out there, betting on yourself, taking that risk, taking that gamble. And you'd be surprised. The more you start doing this, momentum starts to build and things start to happen. And the more you do that, you're going to realize that it is possible, and that in the podcasting ecosystem, people want to connect. People want to go on shows. People are open when you reach out, honestly, with anything in life, whether it's a job or just do it. Just do the damn thing. Another thing I learned was doubling down when you're playing blackjack. When the timing is right and things are working, you may have placed that initial bet and you realize you've got to double down. And this is like investing more into your podcast, whether it be time, money, resources, creativity, on the things that are working. And so if you have a certain show format or a certain like type of episode around a certain topic that you see as performing better than some of your other stuff, start to create more episodes in that vein. If you've been reaching out to potential guests with a certain pitch and you're noticing that that pitch is working and it's not getting rejected as much as other pitches that you're sending, double down on that pitch. And this is calculated. It's not like you got to look at your data. You got to look at your success rate with your emails, your success rate with your episode downloads, and start to find what's working. You really need to get into those analytics and get granular. And then I think when you start to place all your energy into things that are working and not focusing on the stuff that isn't really giving you an ROI, you're going to see your podcast grow. And look, sometimes you have to just go with your gut feeling. And by doing all the things that I've been mentioning, your momentum is going to keep building, and you're going to get some opportunities that, whether they're luck or whether you made your own luck or whether it's just putting that positive energy into the universe and taking those chances and doubling down on the things that are working, you're going to start to realize that you can do this thing, that the people with successful shows are doing the exact same thing that you're doing. They're maybe doing it more often or with more intensity, but these are the steps to help you start to craft a podcast audience and to start to move your show in the right direction. And I think sometimes things aren't in the cards, but it's all about knowing how to play your hand. And the more hands you play, you'll start to realize what's working for you and what's not, and what is possible at the given moment and what isn't really working or isn't possible at that current moment. And the things that aren't possible or aren't working doesn't mean that they're not going to work in the future. It just might mean that they need to be tweaked a little bit and they might require you to learn a little bit more, but eventually you keep pushing forward and you will see the results. You're eventually going to hit your jackpot, and this might not be 1 million listeners, but you might look back and be like, oh shit, my numbers have doubled in the last 6 months, or my numbers are up 25%. You need to celebrate these wins, these mini jackpots as it relates to gambling. It might not be that 500,000 Wheel of Fortune massive jackpot and everyone's screaming and you're celebrating and popping champagne, but you might have doubled your listeners. You might have connected with that dream guest. You might have pitched yourself to go on a podcast that you really admire and that you've been trying to go on. So you got to celebrate these little wins. Even a 10% increase in downloads, like that's huge in the long run. These are the podcast jackpots that we're looking for. Those little wins, those little hitters that are going to pump you up and keep you excited to keep going. And then there's the whole thing of, unfortunately, not all bets pay off. And sometimes, let's face it, we face a losing streak. I lost my ass in Vegas. My wife was the one with the hot hand. But let's say like an episode flops or an investment in your show, whether that's time or money, doesn't pay off. It's frustrating. It's discouraging. But remember, it's also part of the gamble. So I think if you're working on your show and things aren't going the way that you want, I think it's important to try and pivot. Because I think when you pivot, whether that's switching up the format of the show, doing more solo episodes or less solo episodes, implementing video or changing your marketing strategy or going audio only or whatever it is, you have to be willing to try new things. You have to be able to gamble a little bit. It's kind of like knowing when to fold. And just like in a card game, you have to recognize when something isn't working and be willing to let it go. And that can be one of the hardest parts, because I think we get so attached to our ego, so attached to what we think is right. And it can be hard. And I think you have to take a close look at your analytics, at the reviews of your show, at the quality of guests that you're bringing on. If your email marketing is working, if your social numbers are up or down. Just because you fold a hand, it doesn't mean that you can't ante up again and kind of head down a new path with a new strategy. So I think knowing when to fold them, that's not a loss. It's more like pivoting and getting ready to ante up again. And finally, you've got to stay in the game for the long run. You need to ensure that the house always wins, and the house is you. And this means setting up your podcast for sustained success. You start to incorporate all these strategies, and over the long run, you will win and you will see success with your podcast, whatever that means to you. In my opinion, for me personally, success is monetization, but it could be lead generation for your business. It could be getting more and more downloads so that you can get sponsorships or join an agency. It could mean social media growth. It could mean selling affiliate products. All these strategies are what keeps the house winning. That's going to keep you winning, you excited, and you ready to keep dominating this podcast game.